There's a moment in every relationship that feels almost invisible, until it strikes with full force. One day the warmth is there, his eyes, his words, his presence. Then suddenly it isn't. The distance doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like a shadow, subtle but undeniable. You can sense it but cannot name it. That is the most unsettling part. Why does it happen? And more importantly, what does it mean when a man begins to pull away? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, left us with insights that uncover this hidden shift. When that silence grows, many women instinctively respond with more attention, more words, more effort to win back what is slipping. But this is the trap. Because what feels like care to you feels like pressure to him. And pressure in the male psyche suffocates. The tighter you try to hold, the faster he drifts. Jung once explained that the psyche resists what it experiences as force. In love, this resistance plays out with painful clarity. The more energy you pour into chasing, the more he subconsciously withdraws. What you hoped would save the relationship becomes the very thing that destroys it. But here's the hidden truth. One most people never realize. Men value what feels scarce, not what feels certain. The moment you become endlessly available, endlessly chasing, you become familiar, and familiarity erodes mystery. And without mystery, desire withers. Think of it this way. When something rare is always within reach, it loses its spark. The rare jewel locked away holds more fascination than the trinket everyone can touch. This is not about games. It is about understanding the nature of attraction as Jung described it. Desire is born in tension, in space, in the dance between closeness and distance. When the dance disappears, so does the fire. Now, before I reveal the counterintuitive step that begins to reverse this cycle, not through manipulation but by awakening something far deeper, let me pause here. If this resonates with you, don't let the journey stop. Subscribe to my channel SYC Soul, like this video, hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming, and share it with someone who needs these words. The next truth may change how you see connection forever. Carl Jung often emphasized that what lies beneath our actions is more powerful than the actions themselves. On the surface, a woman may think she is simply showing love, writing, calling, staying close. But underneath, what the man senses is a hidden message. I cannot exist without you. Instead of inspiring him, this triggers a deep instinct to pull back. Why? Because to the male psyche, dependence feels like weight, and weight feels like loss of freedom. This doesn't mean men don't want love or closeness. They do, but they crave it differently. For a man, desire thrives when he feels he is choosing, not when he feels he is being cornered. Jung would say that the unconscious resists what is imposed. The more he feels trapped, the more his unconscious will fight to break free, often in ways that appear cold or confusing. Here's where the paradox begins. The more effort you invest to keep him close, the further away he feels. It's almost like a mirror image. The harder you reach, the more he disappears. This is not rejection in the obvious sense. It's the nature of masculine desire colliding with invisible psychological laws. And yet here lies a hidden key. What if the very space you fear, the gap that terrifies you, is the soil where attraction can be reborn? Jung suggested that transformation often requires a kind of withdrawal, a stepping back into shadow before new light can emerge. If closeness is turned into suffocation, then distance may paradoxically create new longing. This is why when a man begins to detach, the most powerful response is often the hardest. Not chasing, not pleading, but allowing space. Space awakens curiosity. Curiosity reignites pursuit, and pursuit restores balance. But this raises a haunting question. If space is the answer, how do you create it without losing him completely? The line is thin, and walking it requires something few people understand. Stay with me, because the next insight may reveal the missing piece you've been searching for. Imagine a flame. If you cover it too tightly, it suffocates. If you leave it completely exposed, it burns out. Desire in a man works the same way. Carl Jung often spoke about balance. The psyche seeks harmony between opposites. For love to remain alive, there must be closeness and distance, comfort and mystery, certainty and uncertainty. Without this duality, attraction collapses. When a man begins to pull away, many women instinctively rush to close the gap. But here's the paradox. What feels like love to you becomes pressure to him, and what feels like space to him often feels like abandonment to you. Two worlds, two different experiences, colliding in silence. Jung called this the clash of projections. We see the other not as they are, but through the lens of our deepest fears and needs. And here's the subtle truth. When you project fear onto his withdrawal, you unconsciously act out of that fear. That's why you overtext, overexplain, overgive. Yet all of this only deepens the very withdrawal you fear. It becomes a cycle, a loop that both of you are trapped in without realizing it. But what if, instead of fighting his distance, you used it? What if the silence became your strength, rather than your enemy? This is where Jung's wisdom cuts deep. He believed the shadow, the part we avoid, is often where our greatest power lies. The shadow of distance can be terrifying, but within it hides the potential to rekindle attraction. Because here's the secret most people never consider. When you step back, not out of fear but out of self-possession, you shift the entire dynamic. Your energy changes. Instead of chasing, you radiate. Instead of clinging, you embody worth. A man senses this instantly, often without words. And what he once took for granted suddenly feels rare again. But how do you embody this balance without pretending, without playing a role? That's the question. Because it isn't about tricks. It's about becoming someone he naturally wants to move toward again. In the next step, I'll show you how this transformation begins inside you, not in him, and why that inner shift has the power to change everything. Carl Jung believed that the greatest changes in our outer life begin in the depths of our inner world. When a man pulls away, it's natural to think the solution lies in changing his behavior, convincing him, pleasing him, winning him back. But the truth is far more surprising. The turning point often happens within you, not him. Ask yourself this. When you feel him drifting, what awakens inside you? Fear? Desperation? Insecurity? Jung would call this the activation of the shadow, the part of us we usually deny, the wounds that whisper, "I'm not enough." And without realizing it, those emotions shape how you act. You cling. You overgive. You beg for crumbs instead of standing in your full worth. That shift, invisible but powerful, tells him something you never meant to say. I have lost myself in you. And here's the paradox. It is precisely when you lose yourself that he begins to lose his attraction. Men are drawn to presence, to a woman who carries her own center of gravity. The moment that disappears, desire quietly erodes. So what happens if instead of collapsing into fear, you lean into strength? Jung often wrote that integration, bringing light into shadow, transforms the psyche. The same applies here. When you own your fear but don't let it control you, you create a different energy. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you stand in silence, and suddenly, the balance shifts. This silence isn't empty, it's powerful. It says, I exist even without you. And ironically, that is the very stance that reawakens pursuit. Because in the male psyche, what is not guaranteed becomes desirable again. But wait, this is not easy. Because the temptation to break the silence, to reach again, is overwhelming. The next question is, how do you hold this space without breaking? How do you stay strong when every nerve in your body screams to chase? Stay with me, because what comes next will give you the key. And before I reveal it, let me pause here. If these insights resonate, don't let this journey end. Subscribe to my channel SYC Soul, like this video, hit the notification bell so you never miss what's ahead, and share it with someone who needs these words today. The hardest part of transformation is not knowing what to do. It is resisting the urge to do what you envy always done. When he grows distant, your instincts scream, reach for him, remind him, rescue what is slipping away. But instincts shaped by fear rarely lead us where we want to go. Carl Jung explained that the unconscious drives us into repeated patterns until we finally become aware of them, and once you see the pattern, you are no longer its prisoner. So pause and notice the cycle. Every time you overextend, what happens? He retreats. And every time he retreats, you panic. This dance can go on endlessly until the relationship itself collapses under the weight of it. But here's the key. The moment you break the cycle by refusing to chase, the entire dynamic begins to shift. This doesn't mean ignoring him with coldness or playing calculated games. It means stepping into a new stance, one rooted in self-respect. Instead of asking, "How do I keep him?" you begin to ask, "How do I keep myself?" That single change in perspective flips the energy of the entire connection. Jung often said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In relationships, fate often feels like loss, as if men are destined to withdraw and women are destined to chase. But what if it isn't fate at all? What if it's simply an unconscious pattern that can be broken? Here's where the mystery deepens. When you stop chasing, he senses something has changed. A space opens, and in that space, curiosity returns. He may not even know why, but suddenly, the pull toward you begins again. This is the hidden alchemy of attraction, one that operates beneath words, beneath logic, deep in the psyche. The question is, how do you sustain this stance, especially when the fear of losing him feels unbearable? The answer lies in shifting your focus from him back to yourself, and that step, though simple, changes everything. Carl Jung often reminded us that the outer relationship mirrors the inner one. When you feel abandoned by someone else, it often reflects the places where you have abandoned yourself. That's why the moment he pulls away can become more than just a crisis. It can become a mirror. The question is not only why is he distant, but also, where have I stopped being present for myself? Think of it this way. If your entire sense of worth rests in his attention, then his withdrawal feels like the collapse of your entire world. But if your worth rests in something deeper, your own presence, your own purpose, your own spirit, then his silence, while painful, no longer defines you. Jung would say this is individuation, the process of becoming whole. When you stop looking to another person to complete you, you begin to embody the completeness that draws others toward you. And here is the paradox. The very moment you no longer need him is often the moment he feels drawn back. Why? Because men are instinctively attracted to strength wrapped in mystery. The woman who radiates presence without clutching, who loves without losing herself, awakens pursuit in a man at a level he doesn't even understand. But don't mistake this for pretending to be strong while secretly collapsing inside. Men sense the truth. This is about building an authentic inner foundation, one that cannot be shaken by his moods, his silences, or even his departures. When you embody this, you no longer chase because you no longer fear being alone. And from that place, everything changes. Still, one final question remains. How do you live this truth consistently? How do you turn insight into daily practice so you don't slip back into the old patterns? Because knowing the truth isn't enough. Embodying it is where the real transformation begins. Stay with me, because the final part will not only reveal the answer but also bring together everything we've uncovered so far. So here we are, at the heart of it all. Carl Jung believed that the greatest discoveries of the psyche are not about others but about ourselves. When a man pulls away, the instinct is to see it as a sign of your failure, or worse, a sign that love itself is doomed. But what if it isn't doom at all? What if his silence is the very invitation to reclaim the parts of yourself you had forgotten? Think back. How many times have you lost your voice in the effort to keep him close? How many times have you dimmed your light so he would not walk away? Each of those moments, though painful, was a clue, a reminder that love cannot survive if it costs you yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the becoming of a whole person, not by clinging to another, but by integrating all the lost fragments of your own soul. And here lies the ultimate paradox of attraction. When you no longer beg for it, when you no longer trade your worth for his attention, You create a magnetism stronger than any words could ever achieve. You radiate presence. You embody mystery. You carry within you both closeness and distance, comfort and challenge. That duality is what reignites desire. It is not about controlling him. It is about transforming you. Because in the end, whether he returns or not, you will have gained something greater. Yourself. And that is the one love story Jung believed was essential. The union of you with your own depth. From there, all other relationships either flourish or fade, but you remain whole. So let this not just be knowledge, but a turning point. Begin the journey back to yourself. Step into that silence not as a victim, but as someone rediscovering her own power. Because once you do, you will never fear his distance again. And before we close, let me pause once more. If this message touched something deep in you, don't stop here. Subscribe to my channel SYC Soul, like this video, hit the notification bell so you never miss what's coming, and share it with someone who needs these words. Because this is not the ender, it is the beginning of a new way of seeing love.